Chapter 1. A Simple Abduction. The red and orange hues of sunset bathed the city of Thessera on the colony planet Citarus IV. The colony's bustling streets slowed as people began winding down their day, unaware of the danger that lurked in the shadows. Among the colony's inhabitants was a young woman named Nyla Jackson. At 21, she had grown accustomed to the peaceful life Citarus IV offered, stark contrast to the galaxy's chaos. Nyla often wondered about her father. She had vague memories of him when she was younger. Gabriel Jackson had left her and her mother on this distant colony when Nyla was just a child, never to return. Her mother had passed away shortly after, leaving Nyla alone to navigate life. Over the years, she had built a small but meaningful existence, surrounded by friends and a tight-knit community. She never dwelled too much on her father's absence. He had been a soldier, or so she was told. The galaxy was vast, and he was likely one of the many who disappeared into its unforgiving abyss. However, Gabriel Jackson was far from a forgotten soldier. Known as the Reaper in clandestine circles, his reputation was that of a ghost, a living weapon whose skills in black ops had once terrified even the most hardened criminals and military powers. The Galactic Syndicate had once employed him, but after a mission gone wrong, Gabriel had vanished, leaving behind his former life. And, as far as anyone knew, his daughter as well. Unbeknownst to Nyla, her father's past was about to crash into her life in the most violent of ways. That evening, as she strolled through the crowded markets of Thessera, shopping for food and essentials, she didn't notice the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The Nyla Cartel had sent a team disguised as travelers, merchants, and local workers blending seamlessly into the crowd. They watched her every move, communicating with one another through hidden devices, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The cartel, known across the galaxy for its cold efficiency in human trafficking and extortion, had a new target in their sights. They believed Nyla to be a wealthy colonist's daughter, someone who could be easily ransomed for a hefty sum. What they didn't know was the true identity of her father or the deadly consequences that would follow. Nyla finished her shopping and began her walk back home, her path leading through the quieter, less populated streets of Thessera. The market buzz faded behind her, replaced by the soft hum of streetlights and the occasional sound of distant engines from cargo ships above. She barely noticed the first two cartel members approaching her. They looked like ordinary travelers, their appearance unremarkable, their clothes unassuming. Nyla offered them a polite nod as they passed by. But as soon as they were behind her, one of them raised a small device, a stun weapon, and fired. A sharp jolt of electricity surged through Nyla's body, paralyzing her limbs and sending her crashing to the ground. Before she could scream, another figure, dressed as a merchant, stepped from the shadows and placed a damp cloth over her mouth and nose. The chemical scent filled her nostrils, and within seconds, her vision blurred and consciousness faded. The cartel team worked quickly and efficiently. One member scooped Nyla's limp body into their arms, while the others covered their tracks, making it look like she had simply disappeared. They knew how to avoid drawing attention. After all, they had executed dozens of such operations across the galaxy. As far as they were concerned, this was just another successful abduction. They transported Nyla to a small, hidden ship docked in a secluded bay just outside the city. By the time anyone noticed she was gone, they would be long off the planet, heading towards one of the cartel's numerous hideouts scattered across the galaxy. Inside the ship, Nyla lay unconscious in a small containment cell. The cartel leader, a cold-eyed alien named Melnix, stood over her, tapping his fingers thoughtfully on the cell's controls. Simple, easy job, Melnix muttered to himself. A few calls, a ransom, and we'll be swimming in credits. The ship's engines roared to life, and within minutes, they were off-world, soaring into the black void of space. The abduction had been executed flawlessly, or so they thought. But something stirred on the edges of the galaxy, something the Nyla Cartel could never have predicted. Far away, in a hidden part of the galaxy known only to the most dangerous of mercenaries, a message was intercepted. It was a routine communication, a ransom notice sent to the authorities on Citarus IV. The cartel's demands were clear: 2 million credits for the safe return of Nyla Jackson. The message contained a photo of Nyla unconscious, but alive, bound in the cartel's makeshift prison. This message, however, reached more than just the planetary authorities. Through a series of encrypted channels, It found its way to a man who had been living in the shadows for over a decade. Gabriel Jackson, once known as the Reaper, sat in a dimly lit room, staring at the holoscreen before him. His face was emotionless, but his eyes told a different story, a story of rage, vengeance, and bloodshed. His daughter was alive, and now she had been taken. For years, Gabriel had stayed hidden, leaving his old life behind to protect Nyla from the enemies he had made. But this was something he could not ignore. The cartel had no idea who they had crossed, but they would learn soon enough. Gabriel reached into a small compartment under his desk and pulled out a sleek, black weapon, a customized plasma pistol he hadn't touched in years. His fingers traced the familiar grooves on the grip, the weight of it bringing back memories of countless battles. But this time, it wasn't just about survival. This time, it was personal. He stood up, his mind already calculating the steps he would need to take. The Nyla cartel was dangerous, but they had made a fatal mistake. They had taken the one person Gabriel had sworn to protect, and for that, they would pay with their lives. As Gabriel prepared to leave, he sent out one final encrypted message to an old contact and ally he knew could help track the cartel. The message was simple: "I'm coming for her." And with that, the deadliest human in the galaxy was once again on the hunt. Chapter 2. The Hunter Awakes. The ship's engines droned quietly as it hurtled through the vast emptiness of space, carrying Nyla farther away from everything she had ever known. Melnix, the cartel leader, sat in the cockpit, monitoring their course while the rest of the crew lounged in the galley, enjoying the spoils of another easy job. They had done this countless times, abducting high-value targets, extorting their families, and walking away with mountains of credits. There was no reason to think this time would be any different. But as the ship traveled deeper into cartel-controlled space, unseen forces were already at work. Gabriel Jackson had not been idle since receiving the ransom message. Using a network of contacts built during his years in Black Ops, he had located the cartel's exact coordinates within hours. The Nyla cartel may have hidden themselves well, but to a man like Gabriel, they might as well have been waving a beacon in the night. He leaned back in the cockpit of his sleek, battle-hardened stealth ship, watching as the NAV screen displayed his target's position. His ship, an unregistered vessel built for speed and stealth, glided through space, undetected by most scanners. It was perfect for this kind of operation. His mind, however, was far from calm. Thoughts of Nyla filled him with an intensity he hadn't felt in years. For over a decade, Gabriel had kept a low profile, distancing himself from his lethal past to keep his daughter safe. But now that safety had been shattered, the cartel had no idea what they had unleashed by taking Nyla. As the ship neared its destination, Gabriel's expression hardened. He was prepared for the violence that would follow. The cartel ship had docked at an old mining facility on an asteroid in the outer rim, far from the prying eyes of law enforcement. The facility was barely functional, a hideout used for smuggling and detaining prisoners while the cartel negotiated ransoms. It was a cold, unforgiving place, perfect for criminals like Melnix and his crew. Inside the facility, Nyla began to stir. The effects of the tranquilizer had worn off, and her mind was slowly piecing together the events that had led her here. Her body ached from the stun weapon, and her wrists were bound with energy cuffs, preventing any movement. She struggled against them, but it was futile. A door slid open, and Melnix walked in, his reptilian eyes gleaming in the dim light. He smiled, revealing sharp, needle-like teeth. "You're awake," he hissed. "Good. We've sent the ransom notice. Soon enough, your family will pay, and we'll be done with you." Nyla's mind raced. She wasn't sure how much they knew about her family, but one thing was certain: they had no idea who her father truly was. And for a brief moment, she almost pitied them. "You're making a mistake," Nyla said quietly, her voice stronger than she felt. Melnix chuckled, crossing his arms. "I doubt that, little human. It's already too late for regrets." Outside the facility, Gabriel's ship drifted silently into the asteroid's orbit. It was time. He activated a series of commands, shutting down the asteroid's external defenses without raising an alarm. A small smirk crossed his lips. Everything was falling into place. He moved swiftly through the ship's cramped corridors, loading his weapon and securing his combat gear. Gabriel had once been a one-man army, capable of dismantling entire squads of enemy soldiers with nothing but his wits and his customized weapons. Today, He would remind the galaxy why he had earned that reputation. He reached the airlock, grabbing a small device from his belt. It was a breaching charge, silent, precise, and deadly. The asteroid's docking bay door was thick and reinforced, but Gabriel was prepared. With a quiet beep, the charge attached itself to the door, and moments later, a perfectly circular hole appeared where the metal had once been. He slipped inside, his boots making no sound as they touched the cold metal floor. The facility was dimly lit, with only a few guards patrolling the area. Gabriel moved like a shadow, eliminating the guards one by one before they could even raise an alarm. His heart pounded as he navigated the narrow corridors, his mind focused on one thing: finding Nyla. He was close now, so close he could almost feel her presence. His eyes scanned the facility's map, searching for the detention area. It wasn't long before he found it. As he approached the cell block, he heard voices: Melnix and his crew, laughing, taunting Nyla. Gabriel's blood boiled. They were already dead. They just didn't know it yet. With a swift motion, Gabriel kicked open the door to the cell block, his plasma pistol drawn. The guards reacted too slowly, and within seconds, they were on the ground, unconscious or worse. Melnix whirled around, his eyes wide with shock as he faced the intruder. "You dash," Melnix stammered, recognizing Gabriel's face from old Cartel reports. "You're supposed to be dead." Gabriel didn't respond. His movements were swift and brutal, disarming Melnix and slamming him against the wall with enough force to crack the surface. "Where's my daughter?" he growled, his voice low and dangerous. Melnix coughed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. You don't understand. We didn't know who she was. We just thought dash." Gabriel cut him off by tightening his grip around Melnix's throat. "Where is she?" Melnix pointed toward a cell in the corner, gasping for air. Gabriel released him and rushed to the cell, overriding the lock with ease. The door slid open, and there she was, Nyla, bound and bruised, but alive. "Dad," she whispered, her voice shaky with disbelief. Gabriel's expression softened for a brief moment as he knelt beside her, gently removing the cuffs from her wrists. "I'm here, Nyla. You're safe now." But the danger wasn't over yet. Behind them, Melnix had recovered enough to activate a silent alarm, alerting the rest of the Cartel forces on the asteroid. They were outnumbered, and reinforcements would arrive soon. Gabriel knew they didn't have much time. He handed Nyla a small blaster from his belt. "Can you shoot?" Nyla nodded, her hands still trembling but steadying as she gripped the weapon. "Yeah, I can." "Good," Gabriel said. "Stay close to me. We're getting out of here." With the Cartel's forces closing in and the clock ticking, father and daughter prepared for the fight of their lives. Gabriel's instincts kicked in, the deadly soldier inside him fully awake once again. He would stop at nothing to protect his daughter. Chapter 3: Fire and Fury. The alarm blared across the mining facility, its high-pitched wail echoing through the metallic corridors. Nyla and Gabriel stood at the center of the cell block, backs to each other, prepared for the onslaught that was about to come their way. The Cartel's reinforcements, alerted by the silent alarm Melnix had triggered, were fast approaching. Gabriel's face was a mask of calm determination. He had been in worse situations before, outnumbered and surrounded by enemies who underestimated his deadly capabilities. But this time, there was more at stake than just his own survival. He had to get Nyla out alive. "Stay close to me, Nyla," he said in a low voice, eyes trained on the door to the cell block. Nyla, holding the blaster her father had given her, nodded, her heart racing. She had never fired a weapon before, but there was no time for hesitation now. Her father's presence was a lifeline, a strange combination of comfort and the realization that the man standing beside her was far more dangerous than she ever imagined. The doors to the cell block burst open, and a wave of Cartel mercenaries flooded into the room, their weapons drawn. For a moment, the mercenaries hesitated, realizing who they were up against. Gabriel Jackson, the Reaper, stood before them, and his reputation had not been exaggerated. But hesitation was fatal. Gabriel moved first, faster than any of them could react. His plasma pistol barked as he took down two mercenaries with precise shots to their chests. The third tried to raise his rifle, but Gabriel was already on him, disarming him with a brutal twist of his wrist before slamming him into the wall. Nyla watched in awe and fear as her father dispatched the mercenaries with ruthless efficiency. The man she had grown up thinking of as a distant, absent figure was now revealed to be something else entirely, something terrifying. But there was no time to dwell on it. More mercenaries were pouring into the cell block. "Take cover," Gabriel ordered, grabbing Nyla's arm and pulling her behind a stack of crates that lined the far wall. Blaster fire erupted around them, searing the metal walls with scorching plasma. Gabriel leaned out from behind cover, firing off several shots that dropped 2 more enemies. He tossed a small device into the middle of the room, a flash grenade. The blinding light erupted with a loud crack, disorienting the remaining mercenaries. "Now!" Gabriel barked, and Nyla sprang into action. Her hands shook, but she raised the blaster and fired. The first shot went wide, but the second found its mark, striking one of the mercenaries in the leg. He crumpled to the ground, writhing in pain. Gabriel nodded approvingly, even as he continued to clear the room. The mercenaries were scrambling, confused and blinded by the flash grenade. Within minutes, the cell block was littered with bodies, and the reinforcements had been neutralized. Nyla's breath came in ragged gasps, her heart pounding. She had never been in a firefight before, never imagined herself in a situation like this. Yet here she was, standing in the middle of a battlefield with her father, the deadliest man in the galaxy. Gabriel holstered his weapon and checked the door for any more reinforcements. "We don't have much time," he said. "More will be coming." Melnix, who had been lying unconscious in the corner, stirred and groaned. Gabriel walked over and lifted him by the collar, his expression cold. "Where's your ship?" Gabriel demanded. Melnix coughed, blood staining his teeth. "You think you can get out of here alive? You're surrounded. The cartel has more ships, more soldiers. You'll never dash." Gabriel slammed him against the wall. "I don't care about your men. I want your ship. Now." Melnix, seeing the fire in Gabriel's eyes, realized he was dealing with more than just a disgruntled parent. This man was capable of far worse than death. With a trembling hand, Melnix pointed toward the main hangar. "The access code is 445 Zeta. It'll get you past the hangar's security," he gasped. Gabriel dropped him without another word. He motioned for Nyla to follow as they made their way through the maze of corridors, keeping low and avoiding the patrolling guards. The facility was large, but Gabriel had studied its layout and memorized the key points. They were heading straight for the hangar, where Melnix's ship was docked. As they approached the hangar, they encountered another squad of cartel soldiers. This time, however, Gabriel didn't waste time on a firefight. He threw a small EMP grenade into the middle of the squad, disabling their weapons and sending them into disarray. In the chaos, he and Nyla slipped through the door and into the hangar. The ship's sleek, black freighter sat in the center of the hangar, its engines idling. Gabriel punched in the access code, and the ship's ramp lowered with a hiss. They sprinted up the ramp, and Gabriel immediately moved to the cockpit, powering up the ship's controls. Nyla strapped herself into the co-pilot's seat, her hands still shaking from the adrenaline. What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Gabriel's eyes were fixed on the control panel as the ship lifted off the hangar floor. "Now, we get you out of here. And then, we finish this." The freighter shot out of the hangar and into the blackness of space, but they weren't in the clear yet. The cartel's fighters had scrambled in response to the alarm, and they were fast closing in on the escaping ship. Gabriel maneuvered the freighter with expert precision, dodging incoming fire from the pursuing fighters. He activated the ship's defensive systems, returning fire and knocking 2 of the cartel's ships out of the sky. But more were closing in. "Hold on," Gabriel said, gripping the controls tightly. The freighter's engines roared as they pushed to their limit, speeding toward the asteroid's outer perimeter. Just as the cartel's ships were about to overtake them, Gabriel activated the ship's jump drive. With a flash of light, the freighter jumped into hyperspace, leaving the cartel ships far behind. For a moment, the cockpit was silent, save for the hum of the ship's engines. Nyla exhaled, leaning back in her seat, her heart still pounding in her chest. "Are we safe?" she asked, her voice small. Gabriel didn't answer right away. His eyes were fixed on the stars streaking past them in hyperspace. He knew they had only bought themselves a temporary reprieve. The cartel wouldn't stop hunting them, not after what he had done. But for now, They were out of immediate danger. For now, he said quietly. But this isn't over. Nyla looked at her father, the man she had thought she barely knew. But in these last few hours, she had seen a side of him that made her question everything she thought she knew about him and about herself. As they sped toward an unknown destination, Nyla couldn't shake the feeling that her father's fight was far from over. And now, she was part of it. Chapter 4. The Reckoning. The freighter emerged from hyperspace, dropping into a quiet region of space, far from cartel-controlled territories. Gabriel leaned back in his seat, his eyes scanning the control panel for any signs of pursuit. For now, they were in the clear, but it wouldn't last. The Nyrex cartel would regroup and come after them, no doubt with greater numbers and deadlier weapons. They had humiliated Melnyx, and the cartel wouldn't take that lightly. Nyla sat in silence next to her father, the events of the past few hours still swirling in her mind. She had never imagined that her father, whom she barely knew, was capable of such violence and skill. Yet there was no mistaking the precision with which he had dispatched the cartel soldiers. It frightened her, but it also made her feel strangely safe. Gabriel broke the silence. We need to find a safe place to lay low for a while. The cartel won't stop, but I know a few places they won't dare follow. Nyla nodded, still processing everything. How did you become like this? She asked quietly, glancing at him. I didn't even know you were alive. I thought you were just a soldier who disappeared. Gabriel's expression softened for a moment. He hadn't expected to have this conversation now, but he owed her the truth. I was more than a soldier, Nyla. I did terrible things for the Galactic Syndicate. Black Ops, assassination missions, things that kept the galaxy in order but left me with blood on my hands. After your mother died, I couldn't come back to you. I was too dangerous. I had enemies everywhere, and I couldn't risk bringing them to your doorstep. Nyla listened, her emotions a mix of anger, sadness, and understanding. You left to protect me? Gabriel nodded. Yes, but now, the cartel has found you, and that means they'll never stop. Not until they're eliminated. His voice was grim, the weight of his decision heavy on his shoulders. Before Nyla could respond, the ship's sensors pinged a signal from a nearby space station, hidden in an asteroid field. It was an old friend of Gabriel's, someone he could trust to provide them with temporary shelter. Gabriel activated the comms and contacted the station. This is Jackson. I need immediate docking clearance, Gabriel said, his voice calm but authoritative. There was a brief pause before a gruff voice responded. Jackson? You're still alive? Thought you'd be dead by now. Not yet. I'm coming in with a passenger. No questions asked. The voice on the other end chuckled. All right. Docking Bay 4 is open. But you better not bring any heat with you. Gabriel guided the freighter toward the asteroid station, an old, run-down outpost that served as a haven for smugglers, mercenaries, and anyone trying to stay off the radar. The station's exterior was scarred and weathered, but it was functional, with a network of hidden routes and tunnels that only a few knew about. As they docked, Gabriel glanced at Nyla. Stay close. The people here aren't exactly friendly, but they'll leave us alone if they know you're with me. Nyla nodded, her nerves on edge as they disembarked. Inside the station, the air was thick with smoke and the smell of fuel. Various aliens and rough-looking humans loitered around the hangar, but none of them dared approach Gabriel as he strode through the station, Nyla close behind. They made their way to a secluded room near the back of the station, where Gabriel's contact, a grizzled old mercenary named Jaren, sat behind a cluttered desk. His cybernetic eye gleamed as he looked up at them. Well, the Reaper returns, Jaren said with a smirk. And with company, no less. Gabriel ignored the jab. We need to disappear for a while. The Nyrex cartel is after us. Jaren raised an eyebrow. Nyrex cartel? You really know how to make friends, don't you? He leaned back in his chair. All right, I can help you lay low for a bit, but you know the cartel won't stop until they get what they want. They'll never get what they want, Gabriel said coldly. I'm going to finish this. Jaren studied Gabriel for a moment before nodding. You've got a plan, then? Gabriel leaned forward. The cartel's strength lies in their leadership, Melnyx and his top lieutenants. If I take them out, the organization will collapse. They'll be too busy fighting over power to come after us. Jaren whistled. Taking out Melnyx won't be easy. He's got half the galaxy in his pocket. Gabriel's eyes were cold and determined. I've taken down worse. Nyla watched her father, still trying to wrap her head around the fact that he was planning to take on an entire cartel to protect her. She wanted to protest, to tell him there had to be another way, but deep down, she knew he was right. The cartel wouldn't stop until they were dead, and if anyone could stop them, it was Gabriel. After securing supplies and information from Jaren, Gabriel and Nyla prepared for the final confrontation. Gabriel knew where Melnix's headquarters was located, a heavily fortified station on the outskirts of Cartel space. It would be dangerous, but it was the only way to end this once and for all. As they approached the station in Melnix's own freighter, Gabriel went over the plan one last time. We hit them hard and fast. I'll go after Melnix. You stay behind me and cover my six. Don't hesitate, and don't be afraid to pull the trigger. Nyla swallowed hard but nodded. She wasn't the same girl she had been before the abduction. She had seen what the cartel was capable of, and now she was ready to fight back. The freighter docked at Melnix's headquarters without raising suspicion. Gabriel and Nyla moved through the station like shadows, avoiding detection until they reached the main command center. Inside, Melnix sat at a massive control console, surrounded by his most trusted lieutenants. The door slid open, and Gabriel stepped inside, his weapon drawn. Melnix's eyes widened in shock. You, Melnix spat. You should be dead. Gabriel fired without hesitation, taking out the guards flanking Melnix. The lieutenants scrambled for cover, but Gabriel was faster, his blaster cutting through the room with deadly accuracy. Nyla followed closely, taking down the guards trying to flank her father. Melnix backed up against the wall, fear flashing in his eyes. You can't kill me, Jackson. The cartel will dash. The cartel is finished, Gabriel said coldly. You made sure of that when you took my daughter. Before Melnix could say another word, Gabriel fired. The cartel leader crumpled to the ground, his reign of terror over. The room fell silent, the last of the cartel's leadership lying at Gabriel's feet. Nyla stood beside him, her heart still racing. But for the first time since her abduction, she felt a sense of closure. Gabriel turned to her, his expression softening. It's over. Nyla nodded, though she knew the galaxy would never be safe for them. But at least for now, the immediate threat was gone. And more than anything, she had gained a new understanding of the man who had sacrificed everything to protect her. As they left the station, Gabriel glanced at Nyla. You did good. Nyla smiled faintly. I had a good teacher. Together, they disappeared into the stars, leaving behind the chaos of the cartel's collapse and stepping into an uncertain future, but they would face it together.